Thank you for joining CU Bands and Fans podcast. Our podcast is brought to you by Homegrown KIO. Homegrown KIO is on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. It is a stellar show featuring the great songs that have come from bands originating in Champaign-Urbana. Listen at 107.9 on your FM dial, at 1079wkio.com, or ask Alexa to play WKIO. Hey, it's Terry and Zach Widdup with CU Bands and Fans podcast, where musicians tell their story. We are so excited to have our guests, Susan Williams and Darryl Wright of Susan Williams and the Right Groove. Hey, you guys, how are you?
We're good.
Good. How are you?
You sound fantastic. You look great. Before I started this podcast, I just kind of was cruising around getting links to, anything that people would be able to connect with you on. I came across Reverb Nation and I clicked play, and I'll let you know what all I heard. Hang on one second.
All right.
I can
Probably
find
nothing
it.
current.
No, it's not current. It's like 2018, but still.
Okay.
This is what I heard.
Alone against the world outside. You were searching for a place to hide. Lost and lonely. Now you've given me the will to survive.
And
When
then I
we're
literally had
hungry.
goosebumps for like 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Susan, seriously, your vocals are just so just tremendous. I don't know how any other way. And of course
Thank
your
you.
bass playing and the blues and the band and the whole thing, because you were this past summer, Zach is part of the Prairie Crossroads Blues Society.
Yes.
They have a blues fest every year, right, Zach?
Yeah.
That takes you a lot of planning and a lot of getting a lineup and all of that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
we've just started working on it for this year.
All right.
Wow. But Susan Williams and the Right Group played this past summer at the Blues Fest,
hmm
and it was so good. It was so good. I had not seen you in a long time. So when I came
Right.
up in the parking lot, you guys had just taken the stage. So I was like, I just got to drop. I grabbed some video, got some photos, but I was like, let me just drop everything right now and just absorb this. God, you're so you really are really, really fantastic. So that being said, how did this begin for you? So we'll go
Okay.
Susan first, and then we'll ask Darryl. Same question.
Right. Well, I mean, our band as it currently stands, I assume, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, no, let's go back to like how you began like bass and doing blues.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're gonna go way back. Okay. I I was always involved in music ever since I was really probably 9 or 10 years old. Um, and I grew up playing the piano, and I think I played clarinet in school bands. But I did not start playing bass until I was 30 years old. I had been asked by Gordy Wilson, um, who was, very
Yeah.
well known in Champaign, to he was actually the accompanist at the church that I went to, and sang at, and he approached me one time and asked if I would audition to sing for a band that he was putting together. So I did and started singing with them, but they didn't have a bass player because Gordy was running the bass line on the keyboard. And so um, there, one night, all the guys in the band were very nice, but the other guys just made a comment one night about why I was getting paid the same as them because I was just the singer. And it kind of hurt my feelings. And so I was talking to Gordy about it. And he's like, Susan, you grew up playing the piano. He said, go buy a bass, learn how to play it, start playing it in the band. And any song you're comfortable playing on, you do it, and I won't do it on the keyboard. And if you're not comfortable, put the bass down and I'll do it on the keyboard. And it was like, it's like somebody slapped me upside the head. Like, that would never have occurred to me. I owe it all to Gordy Wilson for suggesting that. And so that's exactly what I did. I went and bought a bass. I took lessons from John Pennell, who everybody in Champaign knows as well, and just started playing the bass. And it was literally the best piece of musical advice anyone's ever given me in my entire life.
Because it sounds like he was also a kind of, well, you had that comfort zone of if you can't play it or you're not comfortable, put it down and I'll pick it up.
Right. Yeah. So it was, I mean, it was such an easy way to slide into it, you know. So anyway, so then from then on, I played bass in whatever band I was in. And as you know, in terms of how I got to the blues, back then, well, the band we had, which was called Celebration, Bob Towner was the drummer, and Al Iriarty was the guitar player. We did everything. I mean, every genre that there was, from the old jazz standards to what was pop at that time, which would have been in the 80s, and everything in between. And so then it kind of moved on. When that band stopped playing, then I put together a country band, and I had a country band for many years.
Oh, wow.
Under probably various different band names, I'm sure. And then it sort of expanded to include some old rock and roll. And then, as I was getting, I won't say older, because, we girls don't get older, but my voice was getting more mature. And people just started saying to me, why aren't you singing the blues? Your voice sounds like it would fit with the blues. And so I just started paying a whole lot more attention to the blues. And then somewhere in that kind of time frame, I ended up moving to the Chicago area, and I really sort of immersed myself in the blues and just fell 100% in love with the genre of music. And it just kind of went from there.
I did not know that. I would have never guessed that the blues wasn't what you just like began with. You would never know that hearing you.
Oh, well, believe it or not, and people really do have a hard time believing this, I used to be a very clear high soprano when I was young. Yeah, I know, right? No one believes that. And I'm not a smoker. I can't even imagine how deep my voice would have gotten if I'd been a smoker. Never been a smoker. But just time, and I mean, back then the bars were smoky, even though I wasn't smoking, and I'm sure that probably played into it a little bit, but I just had to go with where my voice was going, and I just love the genre. So, but at the same time, it's like I still love good old country music too. So
yeah, but you didn't sing, like you didn't sing like when you were young. You played instruments, but you didn't sing.
Oh, no, I did sing. I sang as long as I can ever remember. I mean, in elementary school, I remember being in besides choir, I remember being in school musicals, and in high school I was in school musicals. And do you remember I suppose it would have been in the 70s, the Up With People group? It was a national singing group, Up With People. Well, there was actually a local group that was kind of based out of Georgetown, Illinois, and I was part of that. We went around and performed for, gosh, I don't know, so many different people and places. And so, no, I've always sung for as long as I can ever remember.
Okay, so but not like proper training. Like did you go to vocal coaches or any of that?
No, no, just like school choir or whatever. I went to a very small church in Fithian, and the choir had about probably 8 people in it. And I do remember when I was in high school, there were no men that were tenors. So Patty Myers, who was one of my mom's friends, and she was in the choir and had the most gorgeous voice. If I probably learned more vocally from her in our little church choir, because she and I ended up being the tenors. And so I learned, it's really how I learned to sing harmony, was in our little church. And everything that she taught me. And then ever after that, singing harmony was always like really easy to me. It just, kind of got ingrained in me, I guess.
When I was in a high school choir, and we had I was a couple hundred people in the choir, and basses and tenors and altos and sopranos. There were 4
Mhm.
women who sang tenor because that's
Okay.
what their voice fit the best.
Right. But we were singing like high tenor, not going down low. We were singing high tenors,
Oh, yeah,
just because there weren't enough men in the choir
yeah.
to do it. But anyway, it still taught me how to sing harmony, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. So Darryl, what about you?
What about me?
Yeah. What about you? Like, where did
Well,
you begin your music journey?
well, really, mine really started. My dad was a bass baritone singer,
Oh,
and he had a gospel quartet.
oh wow.
And I was just enamored with listening to them sing when I was a kid. And I decided I wanted to try to play an instrument. And 2 of my cousins were piano teachers. So I took lessons from them for like a year. But their dad, my uncle, was a guitar player. And I was fascinated by what he was doing. So I said, well, he plays guitar. Um, Maybe I can learn how to play bass, because my dad's voice was stuck in my head. All the bass lines that they played at that time, he sang them. There was no bass player. So he sang all the lines and I memorized them. So he made a deal with me that if I would practice on my uncle's guitar, bass, he would buy me a bass in a year if I progressed. And I did progress. He bought me a bass in 1 year.
Yes.
Yes, he was right on point. He brought me a bass. And then I started to take some bass guitar lessons. And that was really interesting because the guy I was taking lessons from, I would bring him music that I wanted to learn, and he would play it correctly off the paper, but it didn't sound right. And my first experience with learning that reading music is just like reading a paragraph. Some people can do it and some people can't. You can read it with feeling, or you can read it very straight monotone. Okay, so I get this under my belt and I go, oh, this is how the notes are supposed to sound. My dad gets me a mentor, a young man that started playing bass with him. And when the man heard me play, he was like in his early 20s. I was like 12, 13 years old. And he told my dad, why don't I just move over to guitar and we'll let your son play bass, and I'll be his mentor and I'll teach him. It was really good because what he taught me was not songs. He taught me the vocabulary of how
Oh,
to play music. So my early teachings would be, he would put something on like a rock and roll tune. He'd show me the bass line. Then he'd say, now you know 50 songs. And I would look at him and go, what? I can't possibly know 50 songs. And what he would do was open up all these different songs that had the same bass lines, different melodies. Now I understand how hearing something and playing something inside of a genre, you can get inside of it without knowing the song. So this was a really helpful point for me because I did not know like lots of songs, but I knew how to play songs. If
wow.
you told me notes and chords and where to play, I automatically knew what to do because I had this establishment of how songs sound and how to make the bass fit. So this was all really good. So I get into high school and I play string bass and cello for a while. and I'm not really digging it because I just did not like carrying this thing. And I rode the train to school in Chicago. So I did not want to drag this thing back and forth.
Right.
So I had a teacher there who told me at the time, he said, Darryl, you know, what you really want to do is stick with the electric. It's the wave of the future. He was absolutely correct. There's great acoustic bass players out there, but the electric was the wave of the future. And when I started playing electric bass, it was only about 15 years old. It was a new instrument. The bass, people don't know, the bass didn't come until 1953, the electric bass. The guitar had been there, the string bass had been there, all these other instruments, but the electric bass was a fairly new instrument. So I said, well, I think I'll just dive right into this. And I dove in head first. And I've been playing bass now almost 50 years.
That
And
is
You've been playing longer than that.
yeah. Well, you know, I call myself playing. There's the initial period where you start to play, you really don't know shit. Then there's the period where you go, I can play with anybody. Okay, that didn't happen to me until I was like 19 or 20, because I would read all the album jackets. Because at that age, you look and you see these bands, and what you think is you think everybody's a band. Until I realized, no, everybody's not a band. Some of these musicians are hired to do what it is they do. And that became my goal, to be as good as those people who played on those records, because I wanted to be employed.
yeah. Yeah. You
Not
want to
just
make
be in a band.
yeah.
And I tell you, the best piece of advice I got was from my dad one night. I was about 16, and we were watching The Tonight Show. And I mean, my dad was a very good dude. He took me to tons of places. He took me to play with lots of people. And we're watching this Tonight Show, and he turns around to me and he says, you see them guys up on the bandstand? I look at him, I go, yeah. He goes, that's the job for you. And I looked at him like, what is he talking about? This is the job for me. He says, you see them guys up there? They play every night. The check is good, and they play with people all over the world. He was thinking economically.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
check is good. I said, well, you know what? My dad does know some stuff. He knows some stuff. And I embraced all of that and trying to get a balance with playing for passion and playing part is economics.
Yeah.
Because the two, they do blend. It's just how much of a trade-off do you want to have?
Yeah. I have never, we've had a lot of musicians on this podcast and, you know, asked that very question.
Mhm.
I've never heard it explained the way you just did, of how you learn that the feeling of the feeling of the notes, and reading like reading a paragraph, you can read it flat or you can read it with, I've never
Exactly.
ever heard it.
Exactly. I'm glad I got it that way, because it taught me how to use the language. I do this sometimes when I'm teaching people who are trying to read, and I tell them, well, if they say if you read, you play stiff. I say no. I said Hemingway wrote words, and he didn't write stiff. So it's the comparison of how you use the language and how you interpret the language. So I get in some strong disagreements with people about reading music and going, no, it's not as stiff as you think. It's, if you can look at the note and convey the note, then you've achieved what it is you want to achieve. And I was lucky enough to get that very early about playing for the song. And if you're reading, read it as though you were reading a book. You know, you want to make those notes sing. You want to make them sing. And it helps to have good ears. That definitely don't hurt.
Yeah. And, you know, and it tells, you know, you're telling the story with that.
You're telling a story. Yeah, exactly.
Song with that music. I'm sorry. So you both had great, outstanding influences and extremely great advice.
Yes. Mhm.
So Darryl, where did you begin to play out at? What was your first gig?
My first gig was probably with my dad, as I said, with his quartet. I started playing with them at like 13. And what was really good about that is that first of all, I had no fear about being on stage. You know, some people get really nervous, and it always felt like that's where I was supposed to be at anyway. So I never felt nervous about it. But really performing with him, and two of the men in the band were my uncles as well. So it was very family oriented. I got nothing but good advice about do's and don'ts, how to dress, how to look like when you come on stage, look like you come to play. And this is all inside the gospel field. This is not the secular field of R&B and blues and jazz.
Yeah.
This is just the gospel field. But they had a sense of in training me. I didn't realize I was getting so much information at this time that I would need many years later. Be on time. Musicians can be known for not being on time. Be on time. Look like you don't come to the gig drunk. I mean, just simple things. Really. It's really funny how you stop and think, wow, when you get out there and start playing with people, you realize how many people do this. Show up drunk or show up an hour late. And I go, God, I'm so glad I got trained.
Don't show up at all, or
that's a big one. Don't show up at all.
Right.
So that stuff was really important, and I got it so early, very, very early. My dad one time even took me to play. Nat King Cole.
Yeah.
You familiar with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Ike Cole, his brother was a piano player, and he worked at the hotel my dad worked at. When I was 15, my dad is bugging this man. You know how parents can be. Let my boy come play. Let him play. Let him play. He takes me down and lets me play one night. And the guy goes, do you know Misty? I had been playing Misty for like a year. I said, yes. He said, E flat? I said, yes. And I was 15. And so I'm playing with Ike Cole. I had no idea I'm playing with Nat King Cole's brother at 15.
Oh,
yeah.
My God. So when did you realize the greatness that you were in the midst of?
Really, one of my uncles told my dad he said, he's going to be great. He's going to be a great bass player because he just has a sense of song. But what they don't realize is that a lot of it came from natural talent, but good coaching. I was around them all the time. And because I was around them all the time, vocals became first, bass playing was second. As much as at that age, you want to show everything you can do.
Yeah.
They always kept me in check. No, we don't need that. Don't play that, Darryl. Play this, do this. And it was all a great training ground.
So when you got
out there,
when you got away from that,
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do what Darryl wants to do. What was that? I mean, did you just break away from that at some point when you got older and was
what I started doing growing up in Chicago, what I started doing was just venturing into every neighborhood in Chicago and seeking out musicians to play with. And I would be meeting people all the time. So I played in the Latin neighborhoods. I played in the rock and roll neighborhoods. I played in the R&B, soul, gospel. I even worked in the Catholic Church for 10 years, playing masses. This is how everything that came across the table, I would go, yes, I could do it. And even if I didn't know how, I would go to the library and read it or get an audiobook and listen to it and go, oh yeah, that's what that is. I can play that.
Didn't you play pit orchestras for plays?
I played in pit orchestras for plays too, here in Chicago. I've done that work.
So you did the hired bass player thing.
Yes, I call myself a journeyman on a lot of things.
So then how did it come about that you two became Susan Williams and the Wright Group?
Well, go ahead, Susan.
All right. Well, when we started dating 8.5 years ago, everybody seemed super stoked about it. You're both really nice people. It's so cool that you're together. But too bad you can't ever be in a band together because you're both bass players.
That's what I was thinking. I was going to.
Exactly. That's what everybody was thinking.
I find it really interesting the times I've seen you. Susan, you play the low registers and Darryl plays the higher registers on the bass.
Right. And and that's just it. Darryl, when people said that to us, Darryl kind of took it as a challenge and he said, oh, watch. So he's like, there's no reason we can't play together. And so I played what the actual bass line is, because we've always looked at bass playing, I think, from different perspectives. I always learned bass in order to accompany myself while I was singing, and all I was ever interested in doing was holding the bass line down. Darryl calls me a meat and potatoes player, which I'm fine with that. You know, I'm a good solid bass player. It never interested me in trying to do, you know, anything fancy with it or go beyond that. That's just what I wanted to do. And Darryl is just extremely creative and always looking for new ways to play the bass. So it was kind of really perfect, because I play the bass line. He doesn't play the bass line. I do. And he plays it more like a lead instrument, really. And he is just allowed to go wherever he wants to go and play however he wants to play. You should just explain what you do.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the easiest ways to think about it is that when you see two piano players, you hear them, they accompany one another, even though they both playing the same instrument. Okay, you can do the same thing with bass. It's how you accompany, which bassist is going to take what part and how do you accompany one another. Because as we all know, in orchestras, you got 4 basses, you got 4 cellos, you got 4 violins, and there's a way that it's laid out orchestration-wise as to how it all works. Well, it'll work the same way in an ensemble as well, if you think about it. And it doesn't hurt to have really great vocals. that makes it even easier because you got great vocals. So what I do is really pretty minimalistic, but it's an accompanying part. And if you listen close enough, you hear that that's not a guitar. That's because it's something about the tone of a bass that's not like a guitar. Even when you're playing in the upper register, it's not like a guitar. So that's what I try to do. And I try to work with my tone that blends with the tone that she has. So we have like one big sound when we're playing. I hope that explains it somewhat.
Crazy. I got to tell you, I didn't realize that you played bass until this podcast. I mean, I stood there, I watched you, I listened to you, but it didn't register that you were playing bass.
You thought he was playing guitar too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although you did have another guitarist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a drummer.
And a drummer, correct. Yeah.
And are those guys like permanent members? Like it's you guys that make up the Susan Williams and the Right Groove?
The guys that you saw with us at the festival, they're in our pool of people that we use.
Okay.
Around Chicago, it's very hard to have just one group of people that plays together all the time.
Really?
You know, in Central Illinois, that's kind of the standard. You have your group of people, and that's who you play with all the time. And in Chicago, so many of the people, I mean, that's the only job they do. You know, playing music was always a second job for me. You know, I was a school teacher and playing music was my second job, but it wasn't the one that paid my bills per se. You know what I mean? But in Chicago, a lot of people are doing that where they're playing to pay the bills. And so if you're not working them 5-6 nights a week, they're going to play for whoever, you know. I mean, they call themselves jobbers, you know, and so they'll play with you, but they're going to be playing with whoever else calls them as well. So it was a hard transition for me mentally. Darryl really had to keep, you know, pressing the point with me that it's not going to work the same as it did when you had a band in Central Illinois. You have to have a group of people that can come in at any time and play your music, and you have to be okay with that. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So it's him and me, and then Rob Davis is our main drummer, but he's the same way. You know, I mean, he has a painting business during the day, but he plays for 4, 5, 6 bands. So we can't know, even though he considers himself our drummer. Our drummer, but we can't always get him. Like we couldn't get him that weekend because he was already, you know, so we got one of the other guys who plays with us, you know, semi-regularly, that knows our stuff. And same thing with the guitar player. So
when you book, and you booked a lot. I mean, you're kind of like all over the place. Let's say, okay, like for the blues thing that we did that you did this past summer.
Yeah.
solidify and confirm and get those guys to come with you, or did you connect with somebody here in Central Illinois and say, hey, we've got this gig at Bunny's, can you guys play that? I mean, how does
okay, those guys were both from, I mean, the drummer was from Chicago, so he came with us. And actually the guitar player, Matt Fuller, was from the Quad Cities.
Yeah.
We've known him. I've known him since he was like 15, 16 years old. And he's an absolute phenom on guitar. So I don't get to use him very often, but anytime I can grab him, I do. But, you know, sometimes I try to get back to Central Illinois at least 4 times a year.
You do a good job of coming back here. That's not.
Yeah, well, it's important to me. I mean, that's where my roots are, first of all. You know, I still have many friends and hopefully fans still there. And so it's important to keep that connection going. So I do sometimes hire people from Central Illinois that I've played with before or whatever, you know, partly for the convenience of it and partly just for my own personal satisfaction of getting to play with people that I used to play with, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
I've noticed that you and Andy Duncanson host a blues jam every once in a while.
We do.
Back 40
we actually host two different blues jams together.
Yeah, the Back 40, and I think sometimes maybe at the Looney Bin in Bradley.
Each of those is once a month.
Yeah.
So
Andy and I have been friends for a long time, and that's another way to just stay connected with somebody that, you know, I enjoy playing with so much, but you know, he's super busy too, and so we just do this. We just host jams, you know.
Yeah.
That was so cool, and that came across the feed. Like when you guys first started doing that, I was like, oh my God, Susan and Andy together?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
we have a blast.
wow.
Yeah, we have a blast.
Yeah, everybody knows because you two are the top, you know, blues.
Oh, well, you're very kind. Thank you.
I'm not kind, I'm honest.
I appreciate that.
Didn't think it. But so I'm back here at this hiring musicians thing.
Okay.
Because I'm just curious.
Yeah.
So do you have how do you, I guess maybe Darryl, because are you from Chicago, Darryl?
Born and raised here, yeah.
Okay. So your connections, you know how to connect and get a hold of musicians and be like, is there a list or what? How's that work?
You know what I found out is that and it took a little while to get this whole concept together because I came up playing with bands, being in one band, but I was in one band that was financially thriving. So I never worried about making any money. What changed that is having children will change that. I had children, and the band that I was with slowly started to move in the direction which meant I was going to have to be moving my children a lot. And I finally made a transition, and when I'm not moving my kids anymore, and I put myself in the pool. And what you do is you, in any city, and this was in Phoenix, you put yourself in a pool, you start to go to clubs to see who all the people are. Then you sit down and you play. I guarantee you, if you play strong, you're going to probably get hired if there's any spaces. And what happens is that you end up meeting tons of people who have been in bands, but they're all top tier players. And when you stop and think about this, this is the way the whole world works. And I used to get this, like I say, even like, let's say, for instance, we look at Clapton. Where do you think he gets his people from? It's a pool of people that he knows and he has met over the years. This is how this really works, is once you establish yourself, like Susan and I now are pretty well established in the city. We get people calling us, you know, Darryl, if you all need a drummer, give me a call. Darryl, if you all need a guitar player, give me a call. This is what starts to happen. Now, part of that is that you're working. Exactly. Yeah. And part of that is you're working as well. So it's like, well, they're working all the time. I need to try to get with them. And you try to catch these people. And it also helps us that we grab, for lack of a better word, we're grabbing our top tier people. We don't want to go too below the bar because it'll hurt your product. Nothing against some of the other players out here, but it's very true. You want to be top tier.
And that's like that in any profession.
Any
Like,
profession,
right.
you take it and carry it over. You want top tier people.
B&B
And
in a
that's a really good feeling.
yeah, if I'm gonna hire a second photographer, a second shooter,
Yes,
I need to know you're of a certain caliber, because otherwise
absolutely.
it could destroy that clientele.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it would hurt your business.
It
Yeah.
hurts your product. It hurts your
So
product.
you
So it's
guys,
really good now. Susan and I sit in a position to where people they call us, and now we got a list. I look at it and go, God, this list is all 18 people. All the people on this list that we got are all 18 people, and any one of them come in and play what we ask them to play, and they play for the song. This is a really good position to be in, because it's, if, say for instance, we were to get a ton of work and we had 6 months of work, we would probably not be able to get off the phone with people going 6 months. Darryl, you all need a drummer. You all need a guitar player. Yeah, I'm good for 6 months because I got 6 months of work.
want some work, yeah.
It's a game
That's-
changer.
Yeah,
But
it is.
we're glad we're in this position, because it's kind of like, oh, who do we get? Now it's like, oh, who do we get? Not, oh, what are we going to do?
So have you ever, have someone showed up that wasn't really of the kind you were like, "Eeks."
Well, I mean, it happens at jams, you know, because at jams, you welcome anybody at any level, and it's a non-judgmental place for people to get better at their craft, you know?
Play in front
So,
Yes.
yes,
Mhm.
but you know what, we encourage people to do that. But one of the reasons that I really love to host jams so much is because going to jam, like when I first moved to Chicago, that's how I met people. I went to jams and I played, and you know, started putting myself out there, and then exchanging phone numbers with people, you know, to where now, I mean, I have an unbelievable list of phone numbers in my phone of people that I can call. And I encourage people to do that. You know, if someone says they just moved into the area, or they've been taking lessons, but they really don't know how to get hooked up with a band, I'm like, come to our jams, come to the jam. People have to see you, have a chance to play with you, whatever. You'd be amazed at the people that you will connect with. So, you know, I enjoy doing that, because besides just having the chance to play with different people, which is of course always fun, but being able to provide that platform for other people to connect with band members, which has always worked for me, you know, that it's kind of like you feel like you're sort of giving back a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's opening doors for future musicians that are
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
You know, we've got, you know, there are some kids around here. I mean, I'm talking 11, 12 years old,
really good,
that are phenomenal players, and their parents will bring them to the jam sometime. And it's just so heartwarming for everybody, because, you know, we're always saying, well, first of all, you've heard him, you know that the blues is in good hands with the next generation, you know, stuff like that. But it gives them a low pressure way of checking out and playing with adults and getting their name out, and you know, finding that yeah, they're not going to have any trouble getting work, you know, when they're old enough to actually work. So
it's and that's something that's pretty exciting, because around here, I mean, I started to get a little, I can't speak for Zach really, but I started to get a little concerned about there not being any young musician. I'm like, well, they're all, you know, our age, and it's been basically the and I'm like, if we don't get some new young musicians that are gonna like kind of take this next level of live local music, it's gonna, you know,
That's
so
where First Gig comes in. First Gig is doing wonderful things.
yes, First Gig Rock and Roll Camp, yeah, by
yeah, that right. But you
yes.
know, and there always are those younger kids out there. They're always there in every community.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
We
phenomenal talent in every community.
We have 3, well, there's more than 3, but well, first of all, we Ancient Ways came out in 2020. They had they were in their late 20s. Band, original band, rock,
Mhm.
fantastic. They had some gigs booked, but COVID happened. So they ended up going, well, let's just do our own thing in the studio. And that's what they did. So they've recorded
Mhm.
like, I don't know, they've got like four recordings out now. Now they're gigging in different places, but it's original rock music. It's so good.
Mhm.
That was refreshing to see. And then we've got these open mics that Cliff Stoker has began, open mic sessions at 3 different locations.
Mhm.
These young guys come in, they're just brilliant. They're
Mhm.
brilliant and they're young
Mhm.
and they come to them open mics. So yeah, open mics and jams are so important.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
they are important.
Absolutely.
For
Yeah.
you guys to take time and just kind of like give them that platform is awesome.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Susan, speaking of recording, you've recorded quite a bit of music. I know you've recorded some things with Rick Sadowski in Georgetown,
Absolutely.
401 recording studio.
Yes.
He speaks very highly of you. I've got your
Mhm.
CD. Yeah, I've got your
Good.
do. Yeah. So how did you go to recording? How did you go from like, you're playing in band stuff and then you're like, well, I think I'm going to record.
Well, it's kind of, it was a long overdue thing when it finally happened, which if you saw the title of my CD, it's called It's About Time. And that it's literally, there's no song on there with that title. It's literally because when I told people I was recording a CD, almost everyone responded, well, it's about time.
Yeah.
So, so I had to name the CD that. But oh gosh, probably 20 years ago, I was kind of dabbling with songwriting a little bit. Was not really confident about it, but a local high school, I want to say it was Clifton High School, I think, had a recording class, and they had put something out to the public that if you have a song you want to record, you can come in and record it. Our recording class will do it, and they're going to make a compilation CD. And so I submitted for that, and I was one of the people chosen. And so we went in and recorded that one song that I had written. And I'll tell you what, I thought I was hot stuff, because I just needed, I think, to do that to sort of get over that hump. I
Yeah.
don't, back then, people didn't have home recording studios, and it was not an easy thing. I mean, you had to go to a studio, a
You had
professional studio, if that's what, yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, you had to have money, and that was the other
Yeah.
thing I didn't have. I was raising kids and whatever. So of course this was no cost. So anyway, I was super happy knowing that I had done that, and it sort of gave me then the the confidence, I suppose, and maybe the motivation to think about doing it some more. But still, I still didn't do it for a long time, because I was still working, a day job and raising kids and all that. So actually, in the, like, would have been around 2015, maybe 16, something like that. And Rick Sadowski, I'd only met him a couple times. I was still living in Danville at the time. And he came to me one day and approached me about doing some recording, and I mean, honestly, I didn't, other than having met him once, I didn't know anything about him, or didn't know that he had recorded Alison Krauss, and he got
Yeah.
he's got some pretty big names, on his resume. But anyway, I'm just saying that he like kept saying, no, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. And so he's like, why don't we just do a promo CD, just put down a few songs, and he made me a nice offer, and to make that happen. And so we did it, and I mean, I was just thrilled. I mean, I was just thrilled with the results. And you know, once I heard it and knew just how insanely talented he is, you know, as an audio engineer, it's just crazy. He's just got the best ears. Then it was like, okay, now I have to start writing, recording, because I had like snippets of 100 songs in my head, you know, that I just never sat down and finished. So then I started really writing seriously, you know, and I, you know, just like I credit Gordy Wilson with getting me to play bass, you know, I mean, I credit Rick for really, I always tell him he pushed me into it, but in the best possible way. You know, I don't mean that in any kind of negative way. I mean that only in the most positive. I needed to be pushed to make that happen. And and so
I'm glad it happened.
well,
I love having that
thank you.
CD, but
Thank you so much.
let me ask you something. Do you ever stream, or what do you think about that? Like,
We're on Spotify. Yeah.
you?
Oh yeah, we're on Spotify.
Oh, let me get that link.
Yes.
I'll be grabbing that link and putting that on here, everyone that's listening. So yeah, Rick's recording studios are crucial and important. They're changing that recording studio atmosphere thing. Is the climate of that is seriously changing. Just
Right.
like the music scene goes through its transitions and changes. You guys have been doing this long enough to know that how things were done in the past is, you know, kind of, there's been some transitions, and I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Like the computerized things and all of that.
It's technology is good if it's in the right hands. What I mean by that is everybody that has a studio, they can record, but that don't mean that they got the ears to record. That's why producers and engineers are so crucial in what you do. See, the other side of that is that because we have streaming now, it's a huge game changer because you're being played and people hear you, but the return is just absolutely ungodly. The return on your residual on what you make.
Yes.
I used to make really good money, like every 3 quarters from recordings that I played on, sessions that I played on. That has all dried up. It's not even enough to send me any money.
It makes me sick.
Yeah, it really is. It's one of those trade-offs again. You're trading off, you're being heard, but you're not selling any product. And the return that you get on the product is very, very low. So basically people.
I'm sorry, it feels like you're being, it feels like, I mean, it's like the difference between a printed photograph and a digital photograph. Digital,
exactly.
So it's so it's not there's no pizzazz. It's
Right.
so gained now because it's digital. So what? There's a digital picture, boom, 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 boom. But if you see that same picture in print, that's
it's not the same.
Yeah.
Right. The big problem with digital is every display is different. You can, if you get 50 displays, you're going to see 50 slightly different versions of that print. When it's on paper, there's one version of it, and that's what everybody sees.
Yeah. And it's got to be kind of the same with music. Is it's not, I feel like it's not, it should be, but it's not as special. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like when I got your CD, I was like, this is so freaking cool. Like this is, yes, this is cool.
Right. A hard copy.
Yeah. Tangible.
Absolutely. A hard copy. Yeah.
You know, yeah. And I feel like it's, and you can sell CDs and that, and get that return quickly. Whereas digitally, I just feel like y'all taking advantage of digital. I just do.
Well, yeah, it is. It's taken advantage of because basically people are leasing music. They don't own anything. They're leasing it. If you pay for Pandora, Spotify, or iTunes, you're paying a lease to access all the material.
Yeah, because once your
that fee,
you're not going to get any more music from there.
Exactly. If you don't pay that fee that next month, you have no music.
Yep.
I would hope that there are still enough people out there, audiophiles, who like to own their own stuff and have their own libraries, which is really kind of ironic, considering that in the mid 80s and stuff, that's what artists were doing, was selling CDs out the back of their car, trying to get a record deal. It's crazy. And now you're back to selling CDs again because you need to make the money. It's kind of ironic, so crazy.
Rightfully yours. And that, it's like
rightfully yours.
It's like merch. And you should be somebody
merch, exactly, merch.
And that, like, okay, but this was given to me by Susan Williams. So
merch, yeah. Merch. Absolutely.
Pink, it says Susan Williams Band. It's got a bass. I think Susan gave this to me at the first Blues Fest that
I did, yes.
Yeah.
And
I did.
Yeah, and then she's wearing our CU Bands and Fans t-shirt. So
that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Merch and stuff like that is pretty important, and to support artists by purchasing their merch is a greater way to support them than to just download free music. Correct. Or streaming music or whatever. If you're going to download it, at least send them something in Venmo. Do something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's help each other out with this.
Exactly.
It's hard work. I mean, it's a passionate, awesome, wonderful thing, but it is work. And
it is
your work. It's coming out of you. And original music is so incredible. And I feel like Champaign-Urbana, and I just said this on our last podcast, I think, but I feel like Champaign-Urbana, of course, Susan, and now you guys are in Chicago, so you know the depth of that music community there. But Champaign-Urbana, the depth it's like peeling an onion. You're never going to get to it. You're never going to get to the core because it's all so great wrapped around each other. And I feel like a lot of them, and when I say they don't belong here, what I mean is they're so great they should already be.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I'm like, actually, like Champaign-Urbana is such a core music community. The foundation of Champaign County has got a lot to do with music and a lot to do with our musical history here in the live vocal music. I mean, it's honestly, I feel like Nashville should come here. See what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Instead of people going to Nashville really should be coming here and finding some more of these artists.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, Joe Aslan is a good example. I mean, phenomenal. And then he just moved to Nashville so he can, pursue his career because he probably felt he had taken it as far as he could in Champaign. And what a loss for Champaign. But Central Illinois, as you were saying, is so full of phenomenal players, absolutely phenomenal players, which makes it easy if we want to get a gig down there and just hire people from there. I'm not sacrificing quality in any way, shape, or form because that community is so full of amazing players.
Yeah.
I mean, Todd Kester.
Yeah.
What? Well, Todd Kester, that, I used to have a band with him for several years, and now he's moved to Indianapolis, but he's a great example of somebody, that lived in Danville who, can play circles around almost anybody in any community anywhere.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened to him.
And names, several people that are like that in Champaign, in Springfield, in Decatur. And that's so wonderful. Darryl and I have always said that no matter what community you go to, as I've lived several different places, and so has he, there are always amazing players, top tier players in any community who, like you said, Terry, should go somewhere else only because, because they're that good.
Yeah. And that's how I feel about you guys, because when I instead, I'm like, well, no wonder you went to Chicago. No wonder you did, because you're so damn good. I mean, I just feel like you should be, just I literally do. I literally do stand there a lot, and Zach feels the same way, because me and him have looked at each other across the room or across a parking lot or whatever, and are like, we're just like screaming inside, because we look at each other and we're like, oh my God, like this is so freaking good, and we want everybody to hear it, everybody to know it, everybody to see it, and we can't convey that. We can't convey that enough a lot of times on our page. It's like, this is too big for this page. It's too much for this page.
Well, I appreciate that so much. But I've always felt like the music community is so cool, because for the most part, I mean, of course there are a few exceptions, but for the most part, people are there to support each other. Everybody wants everybody else to do well, like, not just themselves. Everybody wants to see all their musical friends succeed too. And it really is like a wonderful support system. I mean, I always call everybody my musical family, because that's what it feels like.
What it is. That's what it is. It's a very tight-knit, awesome group, and community, and the other part of this community is the fans that go and see live music.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They will promote and blow things up and go live, with their cell phones while they're at a thing. They absolutely, they go all out with, helping to promote live music in this community. And if it wasn't for them, you'd be
we would be nothing.
We'd be hurting a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say to me, if I strike up a conversation with somebody at a show and they clearly want to talk music, I mean, I might say, well, do you play an instrument or whatever? And oh no, I can't play, I can't sing, as if they're ashamed. Right. And I'm like, you're here supporting us.
Yes.
You're like one of the most important pieces. Don't act like you
like
are ashamed of that, because we need you just like you need us.
But you're here and you're listening and you're dancing and you're having a good time.
Right.
Blessing and all of that, which is what I love so much about live music, is watching people, just having fun and de-stressing the most, I think. And everybody, like, everybody knows each other. You're out there, you dance, like, hey, what's up? We're all sharing the same experience. It's so cool.
Yes.
I love that so much. But anyway, well, we should probably wrap this up, but it's been so fantastic having you. And thank you both so much for being on our podcast. And
yes, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Can I mention one thing, that we're about halfway done with our next CD. So there will be new music coming out in the next few months. And yes, we are doing it at Studio 401 with Rick Sadowski again, as he did such a fantastic job on our first one. So we're very, very excited about that.
That's awesome. When do you think that'll be released? Do you have a general idea?
Well, all I can say is I need it to be done in 2024. So that's, sometimes things take longer than you want, but my goal is to have it out before the end of 2024.
Oh, I hope so. Okay, what's the title? Do you have one yet?
I don't know yet.
Not yet.
No, don't know yet.
Okay, well, great. We'll be looking forward to that. What's your upcoming gig that's local? You got anything coming up that's?
We're going to be at Pop's Place in Decatur the first Sunday in March. And I believe the night before we're going to play in Hoopston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to book us at the VFW, at the Hoopston VFW that Saturday night.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to book you within that weekend
for Friday night, let me know.
All right. Awesome. Okay. So, and I will have everyone that's listening, I will have links to their music, links to their pages, their Facebook. And I think I might add that video. I might put a link to that video that I took of you guys at the Blues Fest.
Oh, that'd
did
be
you-
awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I loved videoing that. I was like, but then I wanted to like, let me put this down, experience this. Me and them
We just
without,
want you to know how much we appreciate your ongoing support
Yes.
of us and for everything that you do for music in Champaign-Urbana community.
well, I certainly couldn't do a lot of what I do without the support of Zach right there. Like
Oh, I
he-
know. I'm talking to both of you.
But anyway, people, remember, buy merch, buy merch, buy merch, buy merch. And
That's right.
Absolutely. By merch.
you do download some songs, go ahead and send a little bit of money to that Venmo. Thanks you guys so much. Don't go away yet. We're gonna have a small conversation here at the end of this.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just called to tell you that I'm sorry. You know how hard that is for me to say. I can almost picture you were smiling. You wondered how long I could stay away. Well, I know you are feeling pretty smug now, 'cause you think you've got me wrapped up pretty tight. You think I'll always come running back to you, 'cause in your mind you are always right. Well, I'm sorry that I loved you. You know I loved you for too long, and I wish that I had listened when my friends told me to run. And now I've said I'm sorry. When I hang up, I'll be gone. What's the matter, baby? You sound tongue-tied. You say that you don't get it, you're confused. Well, honey, I just told you very clearly I'm not staying here and being used. So go